Can you remember what you were doing on summer holidays from school when you were 16 years old? Well, Keith Gugasia was coding this really impressive Sonic clone on the Amiga during school holidays. It even has the full loop. Look at this. Wow. This was in 1993, but unfortunately it never got released until a playable demo in 2015. Just today, Reassembler, who's working on Sonic the Hedgehog for the Amiga 1200, released a video, and it looks really good. So I thought it would be interesting to look at Blaze, which really nailed the Sonic feel and has a lot of cool tricks up its sleeve. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to mention was the background, because I often use it as an example of changing colors horizontally with the copper. So we see in almost all my videos changing the colors vertically with the copper, but you can also do it horizontally with the copper. So I had read before that you can only change color horizontally with the copper every 8 pixels with 4-bit plane games, every 12 pixels with 5-bit plane games, and every 16 pixels with 6-bit plane games. However, I think that might be incorrect because this game is 5-bit planes, 32 colors. Here's the palette visualizer. So yeah, you can see 32 colors. And here's all the bit planes. Bit plane 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But when I put a screenshot of Blaze into an art program, the distance between where it changes colors is 12 pixels, which makes sense in some areas, but then it's also 8 pixels, which you can see here, which wouldn't make sense because it's 5-bit planes and not 4-bit planes. So to make it easier to see, if we take off all the bit planes and we take off the sprites, which we'll get to later, you can see this copper rainbow, which is doing the horizontal color changes. It might be kind of hard to see, but after checking in A Sprite, this here is 8 pixels and then 12, 12, 8, 12, 12, 8. So it fluctuates between 12 pixels and 8 pixels all the way across the screen. So here's the copper visualizer. And I don't really know how to read hexadecimal, but for anyone who does, I'll just put it up here, wait for vertical position and horizontal position. And then over here also, and here and here. So yeah, each of these lines is changing color 0 all the way down. And then next one, and then next one, and next one. And so then they're all between 8 and 12 pixels distance. And it looks like they stopped doing the blue color after here, but they keep doing it up in this area for the oranges and the reds. So changing colors horizontally with the copper is very rare in games. In fact, I think this is the only game that I've seen so far that does it. However, I think it's done more often in demos because I've seen it a few times there. But yeah, it gives a lot of potential to do different tricks. So if we go back and put on the sprites, you can see that the moon here is a sprite. So sprite 0, 1 attached, 16 pixels across, and 16 color. And then sprite 2 and 3, and 4 and 5, and 6 and 7. So all 8 sprites are used for the moon, and they're attached. So it could be 15 colors plus transparent. But as we were talking about in the Trap Runner video, to not take too many slots up, and it's a 32 color game. If you look at the palette visualizer, so it looks like this part of the palette are the sprite colors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they leave the other colors to use as part of the map and level. So the water effect and the reflections are really nice. So how did he do that? Well, let's pause it for a sec. So if we open the copper visualizer and we look here, we can see a bit plane modulo for the odd planes and bit plane modulo for the even planes. So as we've seen in other games like Disposable Hero, the bit plane modulo is used to just reflect everything that is above it by reversing memory fetching. And then over here, you can see that it starts to change the palette to a bluish tint. You can see it much better here in the palette visualizer. So right here, it changes it all below. So you've got 70 colors in the palette. And then right now in the game, you actually have 93 colors. So the reason for that, again, is all these horizontal copper color changes in the background. So speaking of water effects, look at this amazing waterfall. Look how beautiful it is when you go into it. I think might be my favorite 16-bit water effect. So let's put on the blitter visualizer. And look at that. It's blitting the whole screen. Well, the whole screen above the bitplane modulo. But if we move somewhere where you can't see the water, then yeah, it is blitting the entire screen. So here's what Keith had to say about that on the English Amiga board. The screen is redrawn every frame from 32 by 32 pixel blocks. There was no actual scrolling. This allows fully animated blocks without additional penalty, and also means that glitter objects, blobs, need not save and restore the background. First cell flags determine whether the block is drawn behind the player character without the use of a mask or in front of it, in which case a mask is applied to scissor the tile. The collectibles are actual map tiles, not sprites. He goes on to talk about how he worked on the inclines and tried to get the feel of Sonic right. And then he says here the game was basically written during the school summer holidays. I was still in fourth or fifth form. Now, being Canadian, I wasn't sure what that meant, but I Googled it, and it seems like it means you're 15 or 16 years old. So let me know if I'm wrong about that. But yeah, if he was 16 years old and creating this, then wow, quite the genius. I'll pin down in the comments a link to this discussion and a few other things that he mentions technically about the game, and a link to his blog where you can download the ADF. So blitting the whole screen in these 32 by 32 blocks had a lot of advantages, but it also had some disadvantages, mainly that the game was in 25 frames per second. Not that I could ever tell, really. It seems really, really quick and smooth to me, and yeah, these loops look great. You can even have all this lava coming after you and animated lava down here, and you're always at 25 frames per second. So one thing I think I'm starting to realize is that if you have smaller than a full PAL screen, it seems like from games like Fire and Ice and RoboCop 2 that I looked at, and this one, that you can do almost anything with 25 frames per second. Like you can change the entire screen. Like Fire and Ice had that last level where pretty much the entire screen is being blit. So yeah, it seems on the Amiga OCS that if you're a good programmer and you have a little bit smaller than maximum screen, that you can pretty much do anything. Again, the screen size seems to be very important. In my last video for SWIV, it was 320 by 256, and that did go below 25 frames per second when there was a lot of stuff on the screen. But it also didn't use the blit the whole screen technique. Now, Fire and Ice had a 304 by 192 playable screen, and this game has a very small horizontal resolution of only 256, so the same resolution as Super Nintendo and 25% of Mega Drive games, 256 horizontal, and the playable vertical area here is 195, so 256 by 195. But then again, Blaze is 32 colors, 5-bit planes, whereas Fire and Ice is only the 16 colors, 4-bit planes, and so is RoboCop 2, just 4-bit planes. So let me know what you think of this theory. If for 4-bit plane games, if you keep it between, say, 288 across and 304 across, and say 195 to 208 down, that with good programming you can do pretty much full screen changes every other frame with 25 frames per second. And unlike the consoles, you're not restricted to how many sprites you can have per scan line. You are with your 8 sprites, but with the bobs, you're not. You can have infinite. So you could fill the screen with bobs at 25 frames per second in any creative way you can think of. So anybody that, unlike me, is a real coder, do they think that's a crazy way to put it, or do you think that that pretty much kind of sums it up? So we'll end here with a spring into a double loop to finish it off. Look at that. Pretty sweet. Maybe make it a triple loop, quadruple loop. So very, very impressive no matter what age the coder was. Breaking news, stop the presses. Literally the second before I was going to upload this video, I was going to his blog to find the link, and there's been an update from a few months ago. So breaking news on a 33-year-old game. So guess what? A lot of the stuff I was saying earlier has been negated because he's made it 50 frames per second. So watch down here as I scroll. 50 frames a second. He did it. So the enemies are still 25 frames per second, but the scrolling and your character is 50 frames per second. So he goes into details on his blog, which I'll link to explain how he did it. So just quickly, as this is my first time seeing this, some of the big changes are that the character is now a sprite. If we take the bit planes off, you can see all the sprites. So because Blaze himself is right below the background here, you can reuse the sprite channels. So sprite 0 and 1 are using multiplexing, and you can see them up here for the cloud, there, and then half the moon, and then half of Blaze. and then Sprite 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7. It's still 32 colors, 5-bit planes. Here's the palette visualizer, but he did get rid of the horizontal color changes in the back with the copper. I'm not sure why. I'm going to have to go back and read the blogs in more detail. I just skimmed them quickly so that I could come back and make the changes to this video. It's also still doing the same Blitz 32 by 32 blocks. So it looks like all my theories about 25 frames per second were blown out of the water, because here's 50 frames per second, same technique. So this is very exciting, unexpected news. It looks like he's also created a map editor, so there might be more levels to come. And as you can see, he's improved some of the graphics and everything. So, wow. So let's hope he keeps working on it. Thanks so much for watching this video. I always appreciate it. Please like and subscribe and comment if you haven't. And until next time, take care.